Here we go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Get Into It with Gila. I'm Gila Glassberg, your host, and today I have with me Faye Brezel. Hi, Faye. How are you?
Hi, nice to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. I know you have a very busy schedule, so I'm really, really happy that
Ah,
we found the time.
yes,
Okay, so let's start with introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? What do you do?
sure. So I'm Faye Brezel. I live in Brooklyn, Flatbush, and I'm a therapist. And more recently, I guess I consider myself more of an entrepreneur, even though I practice as a therapist. And I started OKclarity. I would say it's like 7 years now, which is crazy to
Wow.
think about.
Mm-hmm.
And really, first, it started more as an online forum community for people to connect. Just want to breathe. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whew.
Breathe through it. Breathe through it.
Yeah. I got this all the time in the beginning, like totally.
Yeah.
Like I'm cool with it because I'm like, this is not going to stop me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Amazing.
Okay, so basically, I was a therapist in the clinic setting, and I noticed that like so many people had the same issues, and there was nowhere for them outside of our sessions to connect with each other.
Mm.
And that really bothered me because as a therapist, you probably know this just being a nutritionist, you feel like so much closer to, like, you feel so much more able to speak with people that are your colleagues about mental health, probably nutrition, intuitive eating, etc. And like, it just feels so good to have those relationships. As a therapist, you have that too. Like all your friends are therapists or in the therapy world. And my
Mm-hmm.
clients didn't have that. And like, it really bothered me. So we started this online forum community where people would connect with each other. There was nothing really like it. People really liked it once we started it. It was very basic. I built it up myself on Wix. I was totally not tech savvy, but I loved like the space, getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was taking off very slowly, very organically. And then around, like, I would say like a year into it, or maybe even 6 months, I was transitioning to private practice. And I felt so like lost again. Like I was like, oh my God, this is maybe how my clients feel like in their world. But I was like, how do I market myself? How do I get myself out there? I completely was like lost.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why doesn't the Jewish community have an online like directory the same way that, the non-Jewish world has it, like Psychology Today or these other, competitor directories.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, since I already had this like online forum, we iterated and kind of hired a developer to build a directory attached to it, and started, reaching out to people. Totally wasn't an entrepreneur at that point, but I had that, like, I guess energy in me that I was brave enough to reach out to people. And a couple of professionals came on and they were doing amazing. Like they were getting referrals. We were building their kind of like online presence, online brand. And I was like, I really believe that this is something that could be much bigger than it is. We can have therapists, we could have coaches, we could have nutritionists. Like the world is going online. Why doesn't the Jewish community have this? It doesn't make sense. And that's kind of how it all snowballed. And then as we picked up a bit of momentum, I kept just investing more time, energy, resources, finances. And this past November, we relaunched the newest like version of our site. Like we completely rebuilt it ground up, focusing mostly on the directory, because as we were building, and we kind of started this WhatsApp status, which has grown to over 8,000 people at this point. And that's kind of like the community piece, the Instagram, our WhatsApp. We do AMAs all the time, and, we do lives all the time. And we have people like you doing lives on Instagram and podcasts. And I feel like there's already that community sense around OKclarity, where people do feel that sense of community. I'm not saying there's not a need for a forum, but right now we focus on the community piece and the directory. And right now the directory is a place where people can come and find therapists, psychiatrists, nutritionists, coaches. And we're very careful in terms of like vetting every single person. So it's not just, if you pay, you come on. It's really about quality assurance. Obviously, there's no perfect system. We take feedback seriously. And it's kind of a full-time job at this point. Like I work for OKclarity, you know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah. Yes, totally. Wow, that's amazing. Okay. I'm gonna go back a few steps. Okay, so did you always want to be a therapist?
I always want to be a therapist. I think I always had like a calling to it because my mom was a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like very spoken about in my family. I always, and it wasn't like I grew up in like, I was the typical like Beis Yaakov. I went to seminary in Israel, and there was like become a speech therapist. I was like, no way. My sister became a speech therapist. I was just like, I can't do that. I don't know. Like it
Mm-hmm.
didn't speak to me at all. Like, pardon the pun. And
Yeah.
then like OT, I was like, I still till today, I don't know what that is. So like, no thanks. Nutrition was like not even so much a thing like 10 years ago, I don't think, as
No.
much as it is now. And
Yeah.
it wasn't as like interesting to me. What were the other options? Speech, OT, PT. I was like, also no way. Because I was like,
PA.
yeah,
PA.
PA. No, I don't like
Nurse.
it. No, anything medical, I still
Anything
like even
medical.
till today. I'm just like, no,
Yeah,
I can't even listen to
totally.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like anything with blood, I'm like, count me
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So it was more like in the mental health. And I was always into these like I enjoyed, I guess only once I became a therapist, I got more into podcasts and personal growth and all that. I can't say I was into that as a kid. It was just that I was definitely like in tune to people's thoughts and feelings. Like I was, that friend that was like the listener more than the talker,
Hmm.
But I can't say I was like, oh, always like the therapist in my group or in the family. I wasn't. I was,
Hmm.
more once I became a therapist, I became the official therapist
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
every situation.
Yeah. So when you started, I guess when you started your schooling, you were like, okay, I got it. This is what I want to do. Or was it more like it just kind
It
of,
was it was like it
evolved?
just made sense. I was kind of like I was more of like I feel like I was in a rush. Like I don't know if that's like a personality thing, but like I got my bachelor's when I was in pretty much like in the summer between high school and seminary. I got most of my bachelor's. I went to seminary.
Oh my gosh.
I went to BJJ, so I didn't want to take
Mm.
like my studies there too seriously, and I knew that everyone cared about their marks because they wanted to use them for credits. I was like, I care about my marks the whole high school. I want to enjoy seminary. I don't want to care about that, so I'm going to not have to, worry about getting my credits. So I did like a ton of, you were able to do like the Brezel right testing. I took like maybe 50, 60 exams in 2 months.
Wow.
So all I had to do during the year of seminary was like my capstone course, and I kind of had it in my brain that like, yes, when I come home, I will go for this, get this degree, be done in 2 years. And I'll just like, my mom was very into having a degree. She's like, I don't care what you do with it. I don't like, just like a woman needs to have her degree. So if this is what you're deciding, and it happens to be that once I became a therapist, I was like, did I do the right thing? Because I couldn't see myself sitting for 40 hours a week talking to people. I was like, it's just
Hmm.
not my personality. Like I need to be more of like a mover and shaker. I need to be coming and going. And I felt like it was just too much, too heavy. And that's, I think, why like OKclarity and building something connected to therapy, but more in the business world really spoke to me, because it was kind of that blend of really using psychology, being able to still have a private practice, but being more doing something that I felt more spoke to my personality. But like, I never would have thought to go for a business degree or to just start a business out of the blue. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do this and be this for the rest of my life. It was more like, this makes sense. And I definitely could see myself enjoying it. And then there was a time when I was like, I can't do this forever. And that was like around the time when I started the forum, and I was like,
Hmm.
maybe there's like a business piece, and it kind of segued
Hmm.
into that.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was gonna ask you like if you had that like business mind, like a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, they were like the type that were like making camps when they were 10 and like selling
Um,
lemonade and like had that, but you're saying like you
yeah.
kind of figured it out as you were going.
Yes. I mean, I definitely like we definitely played like in my family. I don't think I was ever like known as like the business kid or business mind. I don't know that anybody was, and we happened to all be a bit business centric.
Hmm.
But like I have like my youngest brother, we joke sometimes like we used to have this like thing where we would do favors for each other. We had like a favor business, like we would
Hmm.
like get paid or do, I can't even remember the ins and outs of it, but it was kind of like a business around doing favors for each other, something like
It's
that.
very cute. Yeah, so you really had the entrepreneurial blood,
We could
basically.
say that now,
Yeah,
but I don't
yeah,
know if I would have like
yeah. But you're probably like more of an extrovert, like because I feel like the introvert extrovert thing with a therapist is very, very hard to like sit and focus on one
Mm.
person for like, 40 minutes to an hour versus like the introvert like loves that level of
So it's
connection.
so interesting that you say that, because I happen to be an introvert. Like I'm
Hmm.
totally an introvert, which is why I think that like maybe I'm more of a therapist than an entrepreneur. And that if you go by that, I'm totally not the extrovert type. I can do well in extroverted situations, and people think that I am. But even like you saw today, like to me, this is like extroverted, even though it's one-on-one, but I'm like, oh, this is a podcast. Everyone's gonna be hearing it. For some reason, it triggers some like panic in me.
Yeah,
And
of course. I
I'm
mean,
like,
of course.
I'm like, run away, run away, run away. If I have to public speak, totally not my thing. I push
Uh-huh.
myself to do it just because I'm like committed to like overcoming these things.
Yeah.
But I prefer much more one-on-one time. I'll go to a party, but then I'll need like, and I'll enjoy it every minute of it, but I'll be completely hungover, and not from alcohol, like just
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
social interaction and the
Yeah.
being on.
Yeah.
And then I need to like take a detox from like the world for,
Yeah.
a few days.
A few days. Yeah, totally. I think it's interesting because public speaking, I happen to really like it when I'm doing it. And like when I watch people public speak, I'm like, that's me, my calling. But then like when I
Yeah.
have to actually public speak, I'm like, I like die for a week. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't function.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
And like this whole Netflix thing like really made
Oh
me
my
have to face it.
gosh.
And it's in a way good, because like
Yeah.
if I wasn't pushed to face it, I would never face it,
Yeah.
because I feel like being an entrepreneur, you could hide behind a lot of like you could hide up behind that. You don't have to be a public speaker. You don't
Yeah.
have to, again, it definitely helps if you are,
You
but
could
it's not
hire someone also, like you could be like the brains behind the business and then like hire out,
right,
and that's like totally fine
right.
also. But
Right, which is interesting that you're saying that because like, so OKclarity has been a thing for maybe 6 or 7 years, but like it only really started to take off, I would say like 2 or 3 years ago in a bigger way. And if I had to like put like the one thing, that like made that transition for me was my decision to put myself on social media for the company, like to become the face of the company. That was
mm-hmm.
the hardest thing for me to do. Like I fought it
Mm-hmm.
for so long because like I said, I'm much more of a, introverted, and it was just so against my makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And but that was really important. So like I do think that, like you said, entrepreneurs that are more extroverted naturally, I think they have a leg up, honestly.
Interesting, because you know what, I really like the whole introvert extrovert, that you're not like one or the other, you're like a percentage. I think
Mm,
I always thought I was an introvert, but when I took the test online, how accurate is that? But I was like
okay.
51-49 to
Interesting.
introvert extrovert. And like it's funny because I always had this conversation with friends, especially in seminary. Like there are shy girls and
Yeah.
there are quiet girls and there are loud girls. And, like meaning I had a friend that was like really, really shy. Like when you met her, she like barely spoke, like, but she was like a good listener, or whatever. But then like when you got to know her, she was like really loud, like the type of girl who was like screaming at 2 in the morning. But like, I
Wow.
don't think I'm really shy. I'm just like
Right.
quiet. Like I'll never do that. That will never be my personality. But like
Right.
I think like I love meeting new people, and like yeah, I think everybody gets a little drained
Yes.
from like social settings, even if they are extroverted. It's like a lot of mental
Takes a
drain.
lot.
So it's interesting.
Right. Right. Yeah, definitely. I think also because you're 49, 51, I mean that's like really, really close. Like you're almost
Mm,
tied. I feel like
mm,
and probably many people are pretty close. I
right,
wonder what it would come out to be. But I think that like I think I heard once the definition is like the difference is where you get your energy from,
right,
like what's going to fuel you. So like me
right,
being in front, yes, I love meeting new people also. I find people fascinating and I
right,
love that. But the question is, will that drain me or will that give me energy to like
right,
go and, run a
right.
marathon? For me,
Yes,
it's gonna drain me. But
right.
if I like, sit for a whole day quiet and like that's when it going and like not quiet like in silence and meditation, but
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
people that I'm close to and doing
yeah,
my thing and my routine and my structure and my food,
yeah,
then I can go and like party, So
right,
like
yeah,
that fuels me to then expend energy. So I think that's like how they define it,
right.
in a simpler, more basic way until it became a whole,
Yeah,
book of
conversation.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I was gonna say is that I did a lot of research on it because I was like, I can't like the same like what you said. I mean, I don't have a show on Netflix, but when I started to my business, I was like, I have to get over my fear of public speaking, and like I have to make myself do it. Like even though it's so scary, like first of all, it's a good modeling for clients, right? Like I'm scared too, but I'm doing it. But I remember reading about it that introverts actually make the best public speakers because they have like, like a lot of people who are extroverts, they overcompensate as extroverts with like their loudness, with like their persona, right? But like the introvert really does like make eye contact and connect. And even though there's a lot of people in the room, they might leave the stage and have to like hide for a week, and not want to speak to everybody after. But the fact that they're like introverted and they're able to like get their point across and really have that like high connection.
Engagement. And yeah, that
Yeah,
makes so much
engagement. Yeah,
sense actually. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
And I think I once heard also that like if you're not nervous before a conversation, that's like a red flag because it means that
Hmm.
you have no emotional investment in it. And
Right,
that's if your conversation or talk or whatever it is losing that emotional connection, that emotion, that passion,
hmm,
it's over. Even now, right? So like I had this panic at the beginning of our conversation, but now I'm totally over it, thank God. And like
hmm,
I'm engaged, I'm here, I'm fully with you. It's like me,
hmm.
myself, I'm like in my full self,
Right,
because
yeah,
like I'm an introvert, but I overcame that little
yeah,
hurdle and now I'm like fully here. Versus like if I was an extrovert and this was like a piece of cake for me, and I'm just like, let me get to my next meeting, let's
yeah,
go. I would give you just like, off the cuff answers, have it
yeah.
everything memorized, and it would just be
Right.
like, forget it.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's why it's interesting. I think at least for me, how I like make myself feel better, because like I'm
Yeah.
always my old me was like, "Ugh, I just wish I was an introvert, extrovert. I wish I could just do it. I wish I could just put myself out there." And like I remember when I first started, I did like these like free workshops, and I did one with Rachel Tuckman, who was like so nice and came to my house and we did it together. And I was like, I'm so nervous, like I can't. And she's like, it's good that you're nervous. It means that you care. And I'm like, no one's ever said that to me. Everyone's like, don't be nervous. You're
Right, right.
fine.
The
It's just
worst
your
advice, don't be
house,
nervous.
and you're
Yeah,
like, okay, but I'm literally gonna die.
yeah, Yeah.
So I feel like that reframe has like really, really helped me. At least that's how I make myself feel better. Like the introvert, like what you were saying before when you started like the breathing. And I was thinking to myself, like over the course of these few years that I've been doing the private practice, like I got so good at like just sitting in silence when someone's crying, when someone's breathing, when someone's whatever. And it's like literally like you think in your head, like, are they gonna start talking or are they just gonna like wait for me to talk? And like you just wait and wait and wait and then they're okay. And it's like, whoa, like
Yeah.
I just sat there in the space where
Exactly.
they needed,
Holding space. Yeah.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah. And you're
Okay.
also modeling for them to do that for themselves, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's so powerful. Like I think
Yeah.
introverts are getting like the limelight, we're getting there.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I think it's all about like what you do, you know? Like you could
Yeah.
say I'm introverted, I'm never gonna public speak, I'm never gonna do a podcast, I'm never gonna do anything that scares me because like you're hiding behind that label.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a shame, and it
Hmm.
could be any label, you know. There's also this book that comes to mind that I didn't finish reading or listening to, but I feel like I got the point of it, and it was like personality isn't permanent, and the whole concept of the book is just how your personality is so not permanent.
Hmm.
It's so fluid and it's
Fluid.
constantly
Yeah.
changing. So like for
Yeah.
us to be like I'm an introvert and therefore A, B, and C, or you know, is like we're kind of sticking ourselves into something that's really wants to change and does change over time. So like
Hmm.
even now you're much less of an introvert, or like you're able to do these things that like introverted you, so to speak, would never do, right? So
Hmm.
I think that's
Yeah.
just like an interesting, yeah,
I guess just
point.
labels in general put you in a box and then
Yes,
they
I
they
hate
mess with you.
labels, and
Yeah.
I feel like that's like cliche for a therapist to say, but you know, I have
Yeah.
friends that are therapists and they tell me that they love labels.
Hmm.
Like not that they'll label their clients and be like, but like in their personal life, they're like, tell me, like, doc, tell me what
Yeah.
I have. Like, I want the
Yeah.
label. And I'm like, doc, never tell me what I have.
Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah.
the symptoms and what I could do to heal them. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want a label. So it's funny. I'm just, you know, I think it's again preference, but
Yeah. We could take this conversation in 100 ways, but I just want to say that
yeah.
about labels that I've thought about this also a lot, that like
Yeah.
I guess I'm always just trying to like explain, like let's say with body image, we'll go there for a second. Like, well, everybody's into being like the thin ideal, right? Like everybody wants to be the most beautiful, blah blah blah. And like when clients say that to me, I feel like maybe like like in the past I would be like, why? Who cares? Blah blah blah. But then now I'm like, you know what? We do live in a physical world, and the way that humans like assess things is by labeling and getting. She looks like this, and she looks like that, and went to this school, and she covers her hair. She doesn't, not because we're judging them, but because we're assessing them. So like I guess like just to neutralize that as well, like labels do help in a lot of ways. And yes, of course they could hurt as well. But if you have that like I guess awareness of like, okay, I'm labeling for the sense of like understanding, but not in terms of judgment, it's like, like you
Exactly.
could
For
always
sure.
see.
100%. Yeah, I think there's a place for everything. Back to the introvert conversation, like I think that having a label, you know, like can do some good. And then, yes, even like within the medical frame, like you know, if somebody has something, they want to know what they have so they could treat it, you know.
Right,
But
right.
it's all like on a spectrum, I think. And overall, I think better to just like not pin the problem with labels is that we then have trouble being fluid with them, right? So it's
Right,
like once
right,
you have it, it's there forever, or it's
right.
like stereotype forever. Even look at the labels of what beauty was, right? I feel like that changed over the course of the
Of
past
course.
decade, right?
Yes.
And past, you know, century. So
Yeah.
like even the labels change, but we don't necessarily change with them because we're stuck with a label.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. So you started OKclarity. So you basically started it because you saw the need based on your clients. Like you had your network of support and they did not, meaning like you see a therapist for 1 hour a week, but you need so much more than that to keep you going,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly.
that part of the website was going well. Like
Mhm.
people were like what, like people were connecting with the same diagnosis, or what
Think
was
like
it like?
very basic. It was like kind of like a forum. So like if you know like what Reddit looks like, but even like on
Yeah.
a simple level. So that's
Okay.
how it was. We iterated that a few times. People were
Who's we?
connecting.
Who's we? Like you and a
So okay, so
team?
it's me. Yeah. So at that point I had a very small team. It was me. It was my mom was always like my CFO, you know, and she's a therapist too. So she was kind of like my person that I would speak to, like, is this a good idea? Like she knows the community, she knows she has her
Wow.
clients, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I had a developer at some point, like maybe after the first year. Like I first built it on Wix, which was like
Hmm.
you do it yourself, you know, DIY. And then I was like, we need something more. So we got a developer, and that was like our first like big investment. So I think it was at that point just like me and a developer
Were you
at that
nervous?
point.
Were you nervous to invest like financially, or you saw the vision?
I saw the vision. Like I feel like I have that in my head. Like that's like something that comes naturally to me, but it was definitely nerve-wracking. Like I left at some point before it was like a business at all, before I was making $1, I left my full-time job and I had like a very small private practice. I was in the clinic and I was like, this is speaking to me. I want to devote 50% of my time to this. But like I was single and I was like, I don't have to support myself right now. And this is my dream and I love this and I'm going to pursue it. And I'm just going to, and I literally worked at a Starbucks for like a year and a half.
Wow.
And yeah, like I
Cool.
I really did like the real, people sometimes not that we're like, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. We're not at the 10-year mark and we're not yet an overnight success, but like people think that like, oh, like OKclarity is whatever, but like I don't know what people think, honestly. I try not to go to people's heads.
Right.
But like if you only knew how much like sweat and tears and hard work and Starbucks, squatting over their bathrooms, work sessions for 7 hours a day went into OKclarity, you'd be a lot, it would open people's minds, I feel like. And it happens to be that one of the pieces that you're coming back to the forum piece, I'll just say right now, we don't have a forum community. I kind of substitute that for our Instagram community and our WhatsApp community. But people keep asking for the forum community to come back. At this point, we have so many people. When we had the forums and they were successful, we had like 1,000 people, on like as registered users. And even with that, there was a lot of like managing that had to go into it. Now we're like 25,000 people wide in terms of our reach. And I feel like we have, thousands of people using forums, and it would be a full-time job of more than one person to actually manage it and make sure that no one's suicidal and no one's this, and, and like, that's my hesitation in terms of bringing it back. And we don't have it back. And I feel like I've gotten criticism about that. Like people are really mad we don't have the forum back. So this is my way of saying like, I'm sorry, we're seeing what we can do, but it's like the piece that's not there yet. And I try and hope that like the WhatsApp community and the Instagram community like substitutes it at this point.
Yeah, no, that's really hard because it's like, I guess that really was meaningful to people and helpful for people. And I don't know, I'm thinking like, I guess Facebook group wouldn't work because like you also have to like do all that work. But like, yeah, that type of thing, like Facebook group, people ask questions, people give support, resources like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar. And the reason I didn't start with the Facebook group is because I felt like I want to build something that I would have used at this age. And I was like, I would never want to use Facebook. And I also feel like a lot of our community, I would say like maybe 20 to 30, maybe 35% of our community is the Orthodox community. They're not even on Instagram, like a lot of them on our WhatsApp status, and they would never use Facebook. So I kind of feel like that's like the demographic we're dealing with, and they have different needs.
Right.
So that's why I don't feel like Facebook, and it would, like you said, it would require a lot of the maintenance.
Yeah.
That would.
But one day, God willing, you should do that.
Yeah, one day, God willing. Like I never say never, and I do plan to bring
Yeah.
it back in the works. But like, thank God, I feel like we're really serving a need. The directory is really helping professionals and consumers and potential clients. And I feel like our the other communities, like we have the WhatsApp, the Instagram, is making an impact, and
for sure.
are able to get the support that they need. Even like, let's say with this new feature that we have where professionals like yourself do a live on Instagram.
Yeah, I love that.
Like I love that. And you're so brave that you're doing it, by the way. Like kudos to you.
That doesn't make me nervous, believe it or not. It's the public.
Doesn't like, really? That's
I
so
don't
cool.
see anyone. I'm gonna be nervous because you have a lot of followers, and like I don't like, it's gonna be also, lives are very weird. Like you're talking on the screen and you have to.
But it's still so brave of you. And I love that you're doing it. And I feel like that's in a way like the best type of forum. Like every single night we have a different professional coming on. And for every single professional, practically, we offer people to ask Q&A, which means you can ask any of your questions. We didn't even get that many questions, which means that professionals will probably be able to get to every single one. So like what better system is that? Because whenever we had the forums, you should know, everybody just really wanted to hear from the professionals. They're like, hell, I want professional advice on this.
Interesting.
I just feel like that's interesting too.
Yeah. And obviously lives are live. Like they're not the same as texting and a question.
Exactly. So. But then another point that I could just say up quickly as I just remembered it is that we put the lives now they're on our YouTube and they go onto the website. They'll be under your website on our website. And there's a comments enabled feature, which means that people can respond on the, like post comments, ask questions, you can answer, other people can answer. So there is that element, that community element. This is a new feature that we just got,
Very cool.
Well, that's it. So yeah.
So we don't have so much time, but like I guess
let me give me 1 second. I'm gonna check if I could push my let me just see what's going on. Hold on.
Sure. So I wanted to, we could always do a part 2, but I wanted to hear a little bit about your perspective on intuitive eating. Like I know that OKclarity has a nutrition,
Mhm.
has like you could find a nutritionist there, a dietitian, but I feel like just because you're in the WhatsApp chat and like you're familiar with intuitive eating and you're open to it, like, did you have a change of heart? Like, were you ever into like dieting, weight loss, and then you like kind of shifted gears, or you're still like undecided?
Oh, that's a good question. So I feel like I have so much on this, and we could probably have like a whole nother conversation on this. And I would even like challenge you just because I don't know enough, and I'm very
Mm-hmm.
leery to like be yes to this, no to this,
Mm-hmm.
especially if I don't know something. So like people
Yeah.
ask about ayahuasca and ketamine assisted psychotherapy. And I'm like, we have professionals on the site that deal with that. Like, I'm not the final say on that.
Uh-huh.
Same with intuitive eating in the sense of like, I don't know everything and I'm
Mm-hmm.
aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, and I do think it's a great, like, I would never say it's not a good thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that would be foolish. But I think that there is so much misunderstanding around it, and there's
Mm-hmm.
so much, um, almost like it's romanticized in a way
Mm-hmm.
that turns me off, to be honest, like in a
Mm-hmm.
way,
Mm-hmm.
again, and I could be judging from the wrong sources, right? So like I'll go on Instagram and I'll see these people that look like they're anorexic themselves. And again, I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't judge, but like,
Yeah.
and they're touting, stuffing cereal into their mouth and intuitive eating. And I'm just like, I should just go to your page. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I hope
Like
so.
that messes people
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. And these people have millions of followers. So they're not like,
Yeah.
they have programs. So I'm not saying that they're sharing the wrong thing, but the sensation, it's sensationalized.
Yeah.
That bothers me.
Right.
Um, but as a teenager, like even in Israel in seminary, of course, everyone was dieting. Everyone was terrified to come back with the 15, the pounds. I don't know, they call it the 15 something. I forgot.
Freshman 15 or
Freshman 15, right?
yeah.
Exactly. Um, so like I definitely was much more conscious and had a much unhealthier relationship with food, like not as a teenager, I would say, but maybe like Israel time.
Mm-hmm.
And also Israel, I think messes with your stomach a lot.
Yeah.
Very hard
True.
for me to piece apart like what was my stomach and what was, being away and being immersed in this like unhealthy diet culture.
Yeah.
Um, but like I think that being back home and back in a healthy environment, like it wasn't a massive struggle for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do think that like I speak to one of my friends about this. Like we have these conversations where a lot of times intuitive eating or health, let's talk intuitive eating because health at every size is something different, is just it's at least to me, it's not explained enough in enough personalized way
Mm-hmm.
that that makes sense to everybody, if that
Right.
makes sense. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah. I think that I guess I would have to pull it apart more. I've thought about it a lot, but I think social media, especially Instagram, is not a good forum to learn about intuitive eating personally, and exactly what you're saying, because it's like a lot of pictures, there's a lot of instant things. You can't really explain it on one foot. Like I also think about this in terms of like let's say mental health, like the IFS model or the EFT model, right? Like things can be really misunderstood if you're just watching a live on it. Or like people, like I even think about this sometimes for myself. Like I know a lot about intuitive eating and health at every size and nutrition, right? So like let's say I'll like start recording myself, let's say for Instagram or whatever, and I'll show it to someone. They're like, you didn't explain XYZ. To me, it's like, oh, but I already know that. Like, why do
Right.
they?
So
But they
obvious.
don't know that. They don't know that. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then I think it's just, maybe because diet culture and dieting and wellness culture and all that stuff is so controversial, anyways, right now, that just like throwing intuitive eating in just feels like totally opposite extreme. So it's just like, unless you really understand it or you read the book or learn, like take a
Right.
course, like it's kind of really hard to understand on one foot. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And being even like myself as a therapist, and I actually specialized and I still work, I work with people that are in eating disorder, like recovery, but like they're very deep in recovery, meaning like
Mm-hmm.
more like talk disorder, eating, body image. But in the past, when I worked in the clinic and earlier, many years ago, my private practice, I would work with, eating disorders. I took actually like a specialty 3-year training, like course
Well,
at CSAB. So like I was very, at that point, intuitive eating wasn't as, known
popular.
as popular as now. It was definitely like a thing, but it wasn't as what it is today. And so I do understand like the importance of it, and that's why I would never say like anything. I can't say anything bad about it. I just
Mm-hmm.
can't say that like I fully understand it. Like I'll always recommend and even require my clients to be working with an intuitive eating dietitian, and I'll be
Mm-hmm.
supportive of that. But I'll also hear like the struggle. A lot of times I feel like people have existing conditions or sensitivities, especially if they have an eating disorder or past, or even not,
Mm.
even if it's just like IBS from anxiety or from family, or you're just Ashkenazi, you know what I mean? And you have
Yeah.
a sensitive stomach.
Yeah.
And to say, like you have to eat all foods,
Mm-hmm.
because it's in your mind, or because,
Mm-hmm.
or it's normal to be bloated, every single day. Like those type of things are like, that's where I struggle with it. Like I want
Mm-hmm.
there to be a world where you can be intuitive and you can restrict, even if that's like a terrible word to use,
Mm-hmm.
because it's better for your body on some level. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yes,
I'm
totally.
curious what you
Totally.
say about that. Like, if you're intuitive, is there any place for restriction in your
Right. Right.
thinking? I don't know, but in my
Right.
world, there should be a place for that if it has to be, and it shouldn't feel
Right.
restrictive or deprivation, but it should be like every body is different. Like the same way we all
Right.
look different on the outside, we're all different on the inside.
Right. Totally. So I think that I don't have so much time to explain it, and I hope I'll explain it tonight on the live, or you'll come back
Yeah,
on, and I
sure.
hope you'll listen to episodes on my podcast, so you'll get like a
Yes,
little bit more clarity. But I think that that is where people probably get stuck. Even one of the questions, so I won't say what it is, but like, just is intuitive eating eat whatever you want, right? So it's
right.
really not. It's actually like more of like a journey of like back to yourself. And the food is always a symptom of something else. You know that as somebody who treats eating disorders, right? It's not the eating disorder. The eating disorder is a symptom of something else.
Sure.
So whether you're using restriction to use restriction, binging, obsessive thoughts about food, obsessive thoughts about dieting to avoid other things in your life, or the habit just happened because you were put on a diet as a young person, and like a lot of reinforcing those automatic negative thoughts of like, if you're fat, no one's going to marry you, and fat people are gross, blah, 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 all those thoughts, right? So intuitive eating really dismantles all that by the 10 principles, with like rejecting the diet mentality and getting in touch with hunger and fullness, right? And that's also like just like the layers upon layers. Like I tell clients this all the time, like, you don't feel guilty when you go to the bathroom, right? You're not like, I should have peed less, I should have peed more, right? But we feel
Mhm.
so guilty. I should have eaten more, I should have eaten less, right? And really, if we could just like strip everything down, it's just like a bodily function, hunger and fullness. We've just created all this narrative around, you only could eat this way, and if you don't eat this way, you're bad morally, right? Right. So that's why it's like learning about diet mentality, how much it's affected you, what is your hunger, what is your fullness, and another layer of that is like trusting your body, right? Like I often say, like, nowadays we know, like, we're not going to say to our child, like, go sit on your uncle's lap. And they're like, I don't want to. And you're like, too bad. Like, so we turn off the cues of the body, like, don't trust your gut, don't listen to your body, right? So, like, there's so many layers of that, especially with dieting. Dieting tells you what to eat, when to eat, and how much. So it's like you don't even know when you're hungry and full, right? So there's just like then there's gentle nutrition and joyful movement. So a lot of self-care, like understanding, are you using food to cope, because you don't have adequate self-care, right? So there's so many layers with intuitive eating. And then so I always say, like, when you're ready to use food or gentle nutrition as a form of self-care and not self-punishment, that's when we'll talk about nutrition. So is it restriction? I don't like to think of it as restriction or deprivation. I like to think of it as like, you really want to go to the party, but you're so tired, so you're going to go to sleep, and in the morning you're going to have a better day because you didn't go. So is that restriction? I don't view that as restriction. I view that as
Right.
like making a choice that's good for you and your body and your physical health and mental health, and
Exactly.
for something better, you know?
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I
Yeah.
wish that that could be the message, like that on like the loudest message. I don't
Right,
know.
right.
I look at the wrong the wrong things. I have to clean up my feeds. But like
Yeah.
some see these accounts that I think are legitimate. Like I don't think these people have, necessarily active eating disorders or things like that, but they're these massive intuitive eating, gurus, so to speak. And I look at like what they're talking about, right? Like eating
Hmm.
this. I was in the mood of this, so I'm eating this, and like this is how much like and I'm just like thinking to myself, like if I would eat that, right, like I would get really sick, right? Like I'm not like sick, like I have to end up in the hospital, but I would have a yeast overgrowth, and I would have, you know what I'm saying, like I would get
Interesting.
like because for my body, like I eat that much
Yeah.
sugar, like I will feel physically not good, like really not
Right.
good, like
Right.
really
Right.
important.
Yeah,
But like
totally.
if I tell that to like if somebody, I feel like in today's world, some almost it's a little bit like you have to tiptoe around even saying that, because it's like, oh, then you're restrictive, like especially if you're
Right.
thin, then it's
Right.
like,
Right.
oh, you're not going to eat that piece of cake. And I'm like, no, because I don't want to have like a yeast overgrowth and have like
Yeah.
cuts on my lips because of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. No, that's a really good example.
I
I think
feel
that,
like it's just
yeah.
that's like where I struggle with it, and
Hmm.
I feel like our culture became that it's like there are two camps, right? It's like you're either totally intuitive
Diet or
or you have an eating
anti-diet.
disorder. Either
Yeah.
you're totally intuitive or you have an eating disorder. And there's not that room for that, like you can be intuitive and it looks different for everybody. And it looks like
Yeah.
holding yourself back from that party, so to speak, sometimes, and sometimes going to the party and, being hungover and dealing with the symptoms like
Yeah.
Anschwitz. I ate too much cheesecake, not a binge, not even close to that. For my body, it was too much.
Yeah.
And then I ended up having those like cuts at the sides of your lips, and I'm like, what's this from? And like, my chiropractor's like, oh, you have too much sugar in your gut. And I'm like exposed to that. And he's like, okay, so just change up your probiotic, go back to your clean diet, which is fun. Like for me, that's totally normal. And, 2 weeks later, it's gone.
Right.
But like, had I known that, I probably would have been like, okay, a little lighter on the cheesecake. You know what I mean?
Right. But that really wouldn't be deprivation, would it? It would just be
Exactly. Of
making,
course not. No, I mean, I had a great
right.
time eating as much cheesecake as I wanted, but I would have had like one piece instead of four, and it would have been
Right.
fine. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it's one of those things that's a really, really hard to explain on Instagram. And that's why, like, I see I see dietitians doing like, this is what I eat in a day and why, right? I've seen people do those videos and I'm like, oh, that's such a great idea. And then like, I would like take pictures and explain. I'm like, you can't do this on Instagram. Like you saw my kids eating noodles like whole wheat noodles and like chicken meat sauce with zucchinis, but you didn't see that like 10 minutes later they threw it on the floor and like I had to put them to bed so I couldn't post on Instagram that they actually didn't eat it and blah, blah, blah. Like I'm like, this is crazy. Like that's why I actually stopped posting a lot. Like I'm still there and I still try to like share when I feel like something's helpful and I'm happy to come on the live when I can actually explain things. But like a Instagram post is not going to explain intuitive eating. And maybe it's just the wrong wording. Intuitive eating, it's confusing for people. They think like intuitive means eat whatever you want, even though it's not really intuitive, like intuitive is
Right.
so much more. Intuition is like more depth. There's so much more depth.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so
Exactly.
I get why it's confusing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish that I feel like the reason we're inundated with the wrong messages is because people that want to share the right and perfect messages are silent because it's not possible to do. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
So then
right,
like almost the wrong or sensationalized messages take over, and
right.
that's the service. I would challenge you to just be like, as much as you can, put out
Hmm.
content that's, less sensational maybe, but
Right.
more informative and educational.
Yeah, I hear you.
Even around like restriction and intuitive eating. Like what does that go through? I mean, I guess you could go through all the principles and explain each one, but I just feel
Right,
like
right.
I do sometimes feel like it's either you have an eating disorder or like severe disordered eating, or you're completely intuitive. And like
Hmm.
that's the way it's like looked at. And I feel like that's doing a disservice to people.
Right.
Um, I mean, and intuitive eating is looked at in one way, it's like be perfectly in touch with your body and eat exactly what you want at every moment that you need, and that's good for your body. It's like
Right.
almost an impossible standard.
Yeah,
The
of
best you
course.
can do is be in touch with your body, do the best you can, know what you need to limit, if anything, and continue. It's like I feel like I don't know. Do you feel like it's a there's like a destination, or do you feel like it's a journey? I guess that was like a question that I had for you too.
That's a really good question. I don't think anything is like a destination. Do you?
Mm,
Like, especially
yeah,
like in therapy, like you're not like, okay, now I'm gonna get rid of my anxiety. No, you're gonna have to manage your
right.
anxiety forever, and like you're gonna
I
learn
love
more
that.
skills and learn more skills. So like, yeah, I guess like people always say to me, they're like, you're actually really more of a therapist than a dietitian, and I'm really not a therapist. But
Right.
I feel like that's just kind of like it's like a food therapist, like
Yeah,
like I'm not a
totally.
therapist, but I'm saying like there's just so many layers with the
Exactly.
I would love, you don't have time, but maybe we'll do a part two. But I would just like love to hear, as a mental health professional who has treated eating disorders, like how you think that it's become so important in the frum community to be so skinny. Like that's become such an ideal, and it doesn't really make sense as like a frum person. Like we believe in like looking good and taking care of ourselves, but we don't believe in like adopting the beauty standard of the outside world, and we totally have. So it's like really
Right.
confusing to me how that became like don't gain weight or you're not going to get a shut off. Like that doesn't even make
Right.
any sense. Like if people are born, not you see from your from your family, from your kids, people, you feed the kid the same food and one's skinny as well, one's fat. That's just the way it
Mhm.
is, and we don't want to
Exactly.
believe that.
Right. We don't want to believe genetics. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. I wish I had like so much to say on it. Like I try to like, I don't know if this is personality or just mentality of mine, but it's like I try not to like fight losing battles. You know what I mean? Like I try not to
I
like
hear
change what people are going to care about. I mean, everything in our community, we're so connected to the outside world, right? We're on Instagram just like everybody else is. We're on
you.
TikTok just like everybody else is. We take the same subways. We are
Together,
together, right? What's the word? Like the word
integrated.
integrated or whatever. Yeah. So
Hopefully not so much, but yeah.
Right. So I feel like, I try not to fight losing battles. And I feel like because they have eating disorders, we'll have eating disorders,
Yeah, of course, of
like,
course.
and that's kind of like, now we just have to like deal with it. And hopefully, I think the thing that the leg up that we have as Jewish people is that our healing could be so much more complete because we have Torah and because we have spirituality.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah,
of that, we have that leg up, that we have the truth that we can then use to fight the noise and the detachment from ourselves and our truth. And so that's kind of like how I look at it. And I try not to be like, why are
yeah,
we
I hear
like,
you.
let's
Right,
segregate more, or let's do
right,
this.
right,
It's
right,
like,
right.
all that extremism, I don't think is going to help us get any closer.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of how I view it. But yeah, if you have more to say on it, then I'm happy to hear.
I know I actually really like your answer because I feel like a lot of parents or tell me when you have to go, but I feel like a lot of people tell me this, like, well, I'm okay with my daughter being fat, and I use the word fat to like neutralize the term, like as a descriptor,
Yes,
and
sure.
my daughter, maybe even my daughter's okay with it, but no one's okay with it. So like, what am I supposed to do? Like, she's just not okay with it, right? Or like, I don't know. There's
Who's
no
no one though? Who's this generalized no one? Meaning like,
Oh, like she's bullied in school. She's not going to get her shit
um,
off. People always tell me like you should put your daughter on a diet, right? Or like people say to me like I don't know what to do. Like I'm really working hard on not having diet culture in my house, but like my 3-year-old's coming home with it, my 7-year-old's coming home with it, my 10-year-old's coming home with it, and I'm like, listen, your child will be exposed to diet culture
correct.
probably every day, especially in high school, especially in seminary. That's not what we're fighting. You're not going to fight that, right? That's
Correct.
I
Yes,
like your answer a
exactly.
lot because it's very much in line with that. Like, okay, so
Yeah.
what are the tools? Like, how can you build
Exactly.
yourself up? How can
How
you
often do you look in the mirror and do you tell
right,
yourself out loud how gorgeous you look and how you
right,
love what you see? Like,
right.
how often do you sit down to a beautiful, nourishing meal and
Mm-hmm,
speak beautifully about feeding yourself? How often do you
mm-hmm,
have and indulge and not speak about how guilty you feel and what the number on the scale is going to be and how much you
right,
just ate and how you can't
right.
move because of how much, like, those are the things we could control. And I just feel like this is in the, I just did a podcast 2 days, like last week on Thursday, I think. And it was about shidduchim, right? And it was like, what do you think about the shidduch crisis? And I was like,
Mm-hmm,
I don't even talk about a shidduch crisis, and I'm single, okay?
right.
But I just feel like, like, why do we have to like talk? Not because I'm like, let's not talk negative. I'm not that type of person,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But I'm just like, let's not pick a losing battle. Like whether there's a crisis, there's not a crisis. Like, what can we do to empower ourselves to hopefully make ourselves in the best situation that we could find the best person for ourselves?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's the question. So I feel like it's the same thing here. It's like, let's not blame diet culture. Yes, it's a
Right.
thing. Let's not blame, the non-Jewish magazines and Instagram and social media. Yes, of course it's a factor. But if it wouldn't be these factors,
Or the
something,
Jewish magazines.
or the Jewish magazines, exactly. I laugh at them.
Yeah,
Come on,
yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah,
laughable. They're
yeah,
so
yeah,
laughable.
yeah.
Um,
I don't want to put down any Jewish magazines. It's
yeah.
just like it's not just because there's no women in the pictures doesn't mean like the
Yeah.
weight loss ads are
No,
not, you know.
exactly. It's just hysterical. It's funny. Like
Yeah.
sometimes there's like actually like a recipe or something that I'm like, oh, I would try this. And like before I know it, my mom throws it out. I was like, why do we
Right.
even buy this magazine if we literally just dump it like in
Right.
2 seconds?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
and I
And
was like,
some of
these
them are great.
magazines,
Some of them are great. I'm not trying to bash
yeah,
them at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
not saying specifics,
yeah.
but yeah, in general, I'm just trying to say like we can always blame. There's always going to be a finger
Sure.
outside to point,
You're
and
right.
I prefer to not point the finger at ourselves, but to look inwards and be like, how can I
Mm-hmm.
best control my situation? And that doesn't mean I'm perfect at doing this.
Right.
Of course, I wish that things would be different in external world in many ways, but I just think that it's a futile thing to
You're
put our
right.
energy
You're
on.
right.
And really, like, we
100%.
have so much power. We can change. Like, you can
Yes.
educate people. I can educate people.
Right.
We can model our journeys. And I love what your answer in terms of like intuitive eating not being a destination and it being a journey. Like that makes me feel so much better. Like now I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I'm an intuitive eater because if you tell me
Right.
it's perfection, then I'm like, no, I fell off the boat. And like I feel like there's no place for me because it's like I
Right.
don't have eating disorder, I don't have disordered eating, but I'm
Right.
also not perfect, and I also have
Of
my
course
things
not.
that I'm like, if I eat too much of this, I'm gonna feel sick. And then it's just like, but
Mm.
you never know how much of that is. So it's just like that kind of being able to know that, like, trusting yourself and turning into your own intuition and realizing that there's no perfection. Even Gila, who is
Of
guru in
course.
this case, so to speak, says
Yeah.
there's no destination, it's a journey. And I think that's very comforting.
Right. And I know you have to go, but if you really do want to learn about intuitive eating, or anyone listening or your followers, like
Mhm.
there is a book called Intuitive Eating by two registered
Yes,
dietitians.
I started listening to it. It was like 12 hours long. I got like a
Yeah.
few hours in and I was like, I can't do this.
Oh, it's very, very, but you know what? It's very research heavy. As a dietitian, I loved it. I thought it was so
Yeah.
well researched. I thought it was so well organized and
Mhm.
cited and so important. Like we don't want like fluff, right? But yes, it could
Totally.
be boring, especially if you're not like into that. But like
Right.
the authors Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, like I don't know if you've ever, I interviewed Evelyn and I trained with her.
Wow.
Elise Resch has been interviewed on many episodes also, not on my podcast, but you could Google, put it into Spotify. Their whole thing is about we are not perfect, and that there
I
is
love
no
it.
perfect intuitive
I
eating.
love it.
And the whole theme throughout the book is self-compassion and self-care, and like how we're trying to learn new things and implement new things and being kind to ourselves. And how would we talk to someone who we love? Why do we talk to ourselves so harshly? So it's like that
Right.
whole thing is a misconception about being a perfect eater, being a
Correct.
perfect intuitive eater. It's like just portrayed poorly, honestly, in
Okay,
the
I love
media.
that you said that. You see, like I had no
Yeah.
idea. I didn't finish the book. I definitely started and got a few hours in. But again, like someone like myself, I was listening to it. I don't even remember if it was like personally or professionally inspired. But again, there probably wasn't enough of a pull for me to actually go through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think like these messages are so important. And I feel like as
Mm-hmm.
someone like me who's pretty, in the mental health world doesn't know it, then I'm sure there are other people that don't know it unless I'm just really living under a rock, which
No,
people
no, no, no one. People call me all the time and they're like, I got your number. Could you help me lose weight? And intuitive eating is
yeah,
not about weight loss at all. So I'm
right,
like, did
right,
you read the book? And
right,
some of them have even read the book. I'm like, okay, this is why you work with someone. That's why I tell clients, if you don't want to work with me and you don't know about intuitive eating, read the book, save your money. I don't mind. Like I'm
right.
telling them, listen to the podcast, it's free. But like if you read it and you think that you should eat whatever you want and like, sit in bed all
Mhm.
day, you're just getting the wrong message, It's just
Exactly,
not, that's not,
exactly. And I think intuitive eating and weight loss can coexist.
mhm.
I don't think that that's like the goal of intuitive eating, but I think that it can would you agree with that? Like, is that
Yeah,
is that
so it's very much like understood that it's not a goal of intuitive eating, because
Mhm.
the more you focus on weight loss, the more obsessed you become, the more you
Right? You
really
can't
do
you
end up.
can't get to intuitive eating from a place of weight loss from a
Yeah,
weight loss
yeah.
perspective. Exactly.
Do sometimes people lose weight because they stop binging, or because they really pay attention to what satisfies them, or hunger fullness, and they're not, people are so traumatized by exercise, they've been like abused with it, so they're
Right.
like, oh my god, I don't have to go on the treadmill to exercise, I could go to a dance class. I'm like, of course, you don't have to
Right.
sweat to
Exactly.
exercise, you don't have to kill yourself.
Exactly. Just take a walk. Oh my God. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
best therapy. Just like walking.
yeah,
If you have two
yeah.
feet, like, oh my gosh.
Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, this is
Okay.
so much fun,
Amazing.
and I
Yes.
hope you will come on again. So,
Yes, yes, yes,
okay,
absolutely. We'll
okay,
schedule something. I mean, I feel like we got so much out of this, I don't know,
yeah,
45 minutes
yes,
that we had.
yes.
I feel like I gave you everything. Like, I don't know what else I would talk about, but I definitely am willing to. So
You're fun to talk to, so even for that.
thank you, Gila. Thanks so
Okay,
much. I
okay,
really
sure.
appreciate it. It's been
Thanks
real.
for
It's
coming
been
on.
amazing. Thank you.
Yes, have a great day.
You too.